Zix's four eyes blinked rapidly as they stared at the report on their desk. The senior analyst of the Galactic Council had seen many strange things in their 300 years of service, but this was different. Their gray hands trembled slightly as they reached for their communication device. Counselor Verna must be contacted immediately. They whispered to themselves, their voice carrying the weight of someone who had just discovered something both fascinating and terrifying. The metallic halls of the Galactic Council's analysis wing buzzed with the usual activity of a standard rotation. Various alien species moved about their business, analyzing reports from across the known galaxy. None of them knew that their entire understanding of warfare was about to change. Counselor Verna arrived within minutes, her floating platform humming softly as it carried her serpentine form into Zix's office. Her scales shifted from green to blue, showing her curiosity. "You said it was urgent, senior analyst," she asked, her translator converting her hisses into standard galactic common. Zix nodded, their head tentacles swaying with the motion. "It's about the humans, Counselor. The training exercise data from last week's Proximan border simulation has arrived. I believe you need to see this immediately." The data projected into the air between them, showing the U.S. constellation, a human experimental vessel under the command of Lieutenant Catherine Mills. The ship looked unremarkable. A standard exploration vessel retrofitted with some basic weapon systems. "Watch this sequence," Zix said, pointing to the hologram. The recording showed the constellation facing off against 3 Proximan warships in a training exercise. The Proximans were using standard tactical approaches that had been proven effective over thousands of years of space warfare. Their formation was perfect, their strategy flawless according to all known military doctrine. But then Lieutenant Mills did something unexpected. "She's venting atmosphere from their cargo holds," Verna observed, her scales shifting to yellow in confusion. "But that makes no tactical sense." "Keep watching," Zix urged. The vented atmosphere created a dispersed cloud of frozen particles. The Proximan ships, following standard doctrine, adjusted their sensors to compensate for the visual obstruction. That's when the constellation struck. The human ship had loaded its cargo holds with water before the exercise. The vented water, now frozen in space, created thousands of tiny radar-reflecting surfaces. When the Proximans adjusted their sensors, they were suddenly blind to the actual threat. Hundreds of small maintenance drones that Lieutenant Mills had reprogrammed during the exercise itself. The drones, typically used for hull repairs, attached themselves to the Proximan ship's sensor arrays. Within moments, all 3 warships were effectively blind. "This is innovative," Verna admitted, "but surely not enough to warrant an emergency meeting." Zix raised all 4 hands in a gesture of patience. "That's not the concerning part, Counselor. Look at the timestamp of when Mills conceived this strategy." Verna's scales went white, a sign of shock among her species. "This can't be correct. It shows she created and implemented this tactic in less than 6 minutes." "Exactly," Zix said. "And that's not all. When we interviewed the crew afterward, we learned that this wasn't even a pre-planned strategy. Mills came up with it on the spot when she remembered reading about old Earth naval battles and something called chaff." Verna slithered off her platform, moving closer to examine the data. "Our species take decades to develop new combat doctrines. The Proximans once spent 3 centuries perfecting their sensor array formations. You're telling me this human created a new tactic, repurposed civilian equipment, and successfully executed a combat maneuver in the time it takes to prepare a standard needle?" "Yes," Zix confirmed. "And here's what truly worries me. This isn't an isolated incident. I've been analyzing human military history. They don't just adapt quickly. They thrive on it. They call it battlefield innovation or combat improvisation." The analyst pulled up more files, showing various human conflicts throughout history. "Look at this pattern. In every documented conflict, humans have shown an almost impossible ability to turn non-military items into weapons or tactical advantages. They once used simple agricultural fertilizer to create explosives. They turned civilian aircraft into bombers in days, not years. They've repurposed children's toys for military communication. Verna's scales shifted through multiple colors as she processed this information. This changes everything we thought we knew about human military capabilities. Indeed, Zixth agreed. Our traditional methods of assessing military strength are based on counting weapons, ships, and trained soldiers. But with humans, they paused, searching for the right words. With humans, we need to count everything. Every civilian ship is a potential warship. Every mining tool is a potential weapon. Every piece of technology, no matter how harmless it appears, could be turned into a military asset in minutes, not years. The counselor moved back to her platform, her movements showing clear agitation. We need to investigate this further. If what you're suggesting is true, then every assessment we've made of human military capability is wrong. Zixth finished. Their potential for warfare isn't limited to their designated military assets. It's limited only by their imagination and the materials at hand, which means, for all practical purposes, it's unlimited. Verna's scales settled on a deep purple, the color of serious deliberation. Prepare a full investigation team. I want every aspect of human military adaptation studied. And sixth, she paused at the door. Classify this information as top priority. If humans can turn civilian tools into weapons this quickly, we need to completely reassess our understanding of their warfare capabilities. As Verna left, Zix turned back to the recording of the constellation's exercise. They watched again as Lieutenant Mills turned a simple exploration vessel and maintenance drones into an effective weapon against superior forces. In the background, they could hear the human crew cheering and Lieutenant Mills saying something that would later become famous in council records. Hey, if it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid. Zix had a feeling this human saying would become very important in the days to come. They began preparing the briefing for the full investigation team, knowing that this discovery would change the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. In their final notes for the day, Zix wrote, "Traditional military assessment protocols insufficient for human analysis. Recommendation: classify all human technology, regardless of apparent purpose, as potential military assets. Current estimation of human space warfare capabilities: infinite. Further investigation required." Peter Harris wiped sweat from his forehead as he led Amanda Martinez through the busy spaceport on Mars. The two council investigators tried their best to look casual, but their matching gray uniforms made them stand out among the colorful clothes of the civilian workers. "I still don't understand what we're looking for," Amanda said quietly, checking her datapad. The council's orders were pretty vague. Observe human technological adaptability isn't much to go on. Peter smiled. "Just watch. I picked this spaceport for a reason. There's a cargo ship coming in with engine trouble." They reached a viewing platform overlooking the main repair bay. Below them, a massive cargo vessel was being guided into position by floating guide drones. Its rear engine housing was clearly damaged, with scorch marks visible along one side. "That's the Star Merchant," Peter explained. "They hit a micro-meteor field near Phobos. Standard procedure would be to wait 3 days for replacement parts from Earth." Amanda checked her notes. "But according to the manifest, they're scheduled to leave in 6 hours. That's impossible with this level of damage." "Watch Commander John Phillips." Peter pointed to a man in blue overalls walking toward the damaged ship. "He's famous for what humans call creative repairs." Through their observation glasses, they watched as Phillips studied the damage. He spoke briefly with his repair crew, then started giving orders that made Amanda's eyes go wide. "They're bringing in mining equipment?" she asked, confused. "Those are drill parts from the Martian mining operations." Peter nodded. "Just keep watching." Over the next 4 hours, they observed as Phillips and his team took apart 3 mining drills, 2 atmosphere processors, and what looked like a water purification system. The components were rapidly reconfigured, tested and installed into the cargo ship's engine housing. Amanda's data pad beeped constantly as she recorded everything. "This shouldn't work," she muttered. "They're using industrial mining laser components to replace a standard space drive coil. The power outputs aren't even compatible." "Humans have a saying," Peter said. "Necessity is the mother of invention. Watch what they do with the atmosphere processor parts." The repair team had stripped down the processor and was using its pressure regulation system to create a makeshift power converter. Components that were never designed to work together were being forced into harmony through what Amanda could only describe as mechanical stubbornness. Done. Commander Phillips called out 5 hours and 43 minutes later. The engine hummed to life, its glow slightly bluer than normal, but otherwise functioning perfectly. "How?" Amanda asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Those parts weren't designed for this. The power systems aren't compatible. The control interfaces shouldn't even connect to each other. This defies everything we know about engineering." Peter led her to a small cafe overlooking the repair bay. As they sat down, he pulled out his own datapad. "This is why the Council sent us. What you just saw isn't unusual for humans. They do this kind of thing all the time." He showed her footage from various human installations across the solar system. A farming colony that turned their tractors into defensive vehicles in hours. A research station that modified their communication array into a weapon using parts from their kitchen appliances. A space station that created an emergency air filtration system using pieces of their exercise equipment. "But this goes against all standard engineering principles," Amanda protested. "You can't just make things work by wanting them to work." "Humans can," Peter said simply. "They have this ability to look at technology and see not what it's designed to do, but what it could do. They call it hacking or jerry-rigging, or sometimes kludging. Taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways." Amanda watched as the Star Merchant's engines powered up for a test sequence. The blue glow was still unusual, but the power readings on her pad showed the ship was operating at 95% efficiency. "The really interesting part," Peter continued, "is that they do this in combat situations too. There are records of human ships taking heavy damage in battles, and instead of retreating for repairs, they just adapt. They use whatever they have on hand to keep fighting." "Is that why the Council is so interested?" Amanda asked, beginning to understand. "Because they can turn anything into a weapon." Peter nodded. "Not just weapons. They can turn anything into anything they need. Give a human engineer a broken food synthesizer and some spare parts from a cleaning robot, and they might give you back a working communication system. It doesn't make sense, but they do it anyway." They watched as the Star Merchant lifted off, its modified engines working perfectly despite being partly made from mining equipment. Commander Phillips and his team were already cleaning up, probably planning to rebuild the mining equipment they'd cannibalized using parts from something else. "We should visit the orbital stations next," Peter suggested. "Wait until you see what they do with satellite repair equipment. There's a station chief up there who once turned a solar panel adjustment arm into a point defense weapon in under an hour." Amanda looked at her datapad, scrolling through the footage they'd collected. "I need to update my report to the Council. How do you even classify this kind of capability? It's not just about weapons or ships anymore. Everything they have is potential." "That's exactly what the Council needs to understand," Peter said. "When assessing human military capability, you can't just count their weapons. You have to count everything they have access to, because everything is a potential resource." As they prepared to leave for the orbital stations, Amanda added a note to her report. "Human engineering methodology defies standard classification. Recommendation: consider all human technology as multipurpose. Standard threat assessment protocols insufficient. Need new classification system for species capable of rapid technological adaptation." The Star Merchant disappeared into the Martian sky, its blue engine glow a testament to humanity's strange ability to make the impossible work. Below, Commander Phillips was already starting on his next project, apparently planning to rebuild the mining drills using parts from a broken food court vending machine. "Just another day at a human spaceport," Peter said with a smile. "Wait until you see what they do when they're actually trying to be creative." Amanda looked at him worriedly. "You mean this wasn't them being creative?" "No," Peter laughed. "This was just them solving a simple problem. Creative is when they start combining things on purpose, not out of necessity. That's when it gets really interesting." They headed toward their shuttle, Amanda's data pad already filling with notes about human technological adaptability. The Council would need to know everything, especially about how quickly and easily humans could repurpose technology. Their entire understanding of military capability assessment would need to change. Because in a galaxy where military power was measured by the weapons you had, humans had just proved that everything was a weapon, or a ship, or a tool, or whatever else they needed it to be. And they could make these changes in hours, not years. The implications were both fascinating and terrifying. The Titan colony looked peaceful under Saturn's massive presence in the sky. Colony Director Susan Wright stood at her office window, watching workers in environment suits check the ice mining equipment. It was a normal day on Titan, until the message arrived. "Director Wright," her computer announced, "priority transmission from Galactic Council." Susan turned from the window and sat at her desk. The message was short and alarming. The Council would conduct a simulated invasion of Titan in 48 hours. The colony had to defend itself using only the equipment and resources currently on hand. No outside help would be allowed. She immediately called Defense Chief Alan Baker to her office. Alan arrived 10 minutes later, his usual calm expression replaced with concern. "I've read the message," he said, sitting down. 48 hours to turn an ice mining colony into a fortress. That's challenging." Susan smiled. "Good thing we like challenges. What do we have to work with?" They pulled up the colony's inventory on the main screen. The list was simple: 20 ice mining rigs, 30 atmospheric processors, 50 cargo vehicles, 200 environment suits, and various maintenance equipment. Nothing military, not even basic weapons. "Well," Alan said, studying the list, "those mining lasers could be useful." "The ones we use to cut through Titan's ice?" Susan asked, already seeing where he was going with this. "Exactly. They're designed to cut through thick ice, but with some adjustments." He typed quickly on his tablet. "We could increase their power and change their focus. They'd make decent defense weapons." Susan nodded. "Good start. What about the atmospheric processors?" "They're basically big pressure generators," Alan said thoughtfully. "If we reverse their flow, we could create barriers of pressurized gas." Susan finished. "The cold here would freeze it almost instantly. Instant walls." Over the next few hours, they developed their plan. The colony's workers, excited by the challenge, threw themselves into the work. They didn't see it as a crisis. They saw it as a puzzle to solve. Mike Rogers, their head engineer, proved especially creative. He looked at the cargo vehicles and saw more than just transportation. "These things have powerful motors," he explained to Susan. "We can take them apart and use the engines as generators for our defense systems. Plus, their frames are perfect for mobile platforms." Linda Cooper, the environmental systems manager, had her own ideas about the suits. "Our environment suits have really sensitive sensors," she said. "They have to detect any leaks or damage. If we link them all together and boost their power, we'd have an early warning system." Alan finished, growing more excited. "Perfect." The colony became a hive of activity. Workers took apart equipment and put it back together in new ways. Mining rigs became defense turrets. Cargo vehicles transformed into mobile weapon platforms. Atmospheric processors turned into both shields and weapons. Susan watched it all from her office, sending regular updates to the Council observers who had arrived to watch their preparation. She noticed how the alien observers seemed shocked by how quickly humans could change their equipment's purpose. "I don't understand," one observer said to her. These machines were never designed for defense. How can your people just change them like this? Susan shrugged. Everything can be something else if you look at it the right way. A mining laser is just a weapon that happens to be cutting ice. An atmospheric processor is just a way to move gas. Whether you use that to help people breathe or create defensive barriers doesn't matter to the machine. 47 hours after receiving the message, the peaceful mining colony had transformed. Mining lasers, now modified and strengthened, sat on mobile platforms made from cargo vehicles. Walls of frozen gas could be created in seconds using the atmospheric processors. Every environment suit was part of a linked sensor network that could detect movement anywhere near the colony. The Council's test fleet arrived exactly on schedule. They expected to find a helpless mining colony. Instead, they faced a fortress. The simulated attack began with scout ships testing the colony's defenses. The frozen gas barriers confused their sensors. When they tried to move closer, modified mining lasers forced them back. Every attempt to find a weak spot was detected by the linked environment suit sensors. After 6 hours of failed attacks, the test fleet's commander called for a halt. The Council observers were busy taking notes and making recordings. "This is impossible," one observer said to Susan. "You turned mining equipment into a defense system that stopped a modern space fleet. How did you know it would work?" "We didn't," Susan admitted. "We just tried things until they did work. Humans are good at that. Trying new things, fixing what doesn't work, trying again." Alan added, "There's an old saying on Earth. Necessity is the mother of invention. When we need something, we find a way to make it happen." The Council observers left with hours of recordings and data. The test fleet departed, its commander still trying to understand how they'd been stopped by modified mining equipment. Susan stood at her office window again, watching as her people began converting their defense systems back into mining equipment. She knew they'd probably work better now. Humans always learned something new when they took things apart and put them back together. She wrote her final report to the Council. "Colony defense test completed successfully. All equipment will be returned to normal operations within 24 hours. Note: colony efficiency may be improved due to innovations discovered during modifications. Request permission to maintain some modifications for improved mining operations." The Council's response came an hour later. "Permission granted. Please share all technical innovations with Council Engineering Division." Query: would similar modifications be possible with different equipment? Susan smiled as she wrote her answer. "Any equipment can be modified. The only limit is imagination and available materials. This is not unique to our colony. It is a common human trait. We call it making do with what you have." Later, she heard that her report became required reading at the Council's Military Assessment Division. They added a new note to their files. Human colonies should not be assessed based on military equipment presence. All human equipment should be considered dual purpose, with rapid conversion potential. The Titan colony returned to its peaceful mining operation. But now, every Council species knew that peace didn't mean harmless. Not when humans could turn mining equipment into a fortress in just 2 days. As Susan liked to say, everything is useful. It just depends on how you use it. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Analyst Zixith stepped up to the speaking platform. Representatives from over 200 alien species watched, their attention fixed on the 4-armed alien who had called this emergency session. "Honored Council members," Zixith began, their voice steady despite their nervousness. "What I am about to share will change how we view human military capabilities forever." The massive display behind them lit up, showing footage from the recent tests and investigations. Images of the Titan colony's transformation appeared alongside data from the U.S. Constellation's training exercise. "We have been wrong," Zixith continued. "Completely and dangerously wrong about how we measure human military strength." In the front row, Councillor Verna's scales shifted to deep blue, showing her agreement. Next to her, the representatives from the Proximan Alliance looked uncomfortable, remembering their failed training exercise. To demonstrate my point, I have asked Major Christopher Bennett of the Earth Space Force to show us something. Zix gestured to a side door, where a human in a blue uniform entered. Major Bennett walked to the center of the chamber. Behind him, workers brought in what looked like ordinary items: kitchen appliances, entertainment systems, and spare parts from various machines. "What you see here," Bennett said, pointing to the pile of equipment, "is just regular stuff you'd find on any cargo ship. Nothing special, nothing military. Now watch what we can do with it in 6 hours." The council members watched, first with confusion, then with growing amazement, as Bennett and his team began to work. They took apart the entertainment system's powered units. They stripped down the kitchen appliances. They rearranged and reconnected parts that were never meant to work together. As they worked, Zix explained what they were seeing. Humans don't think about technology the way we do. When we look at a food processor, we see only a food processor. When humans look at it, they see power units, motors, sharp blades, and electronic components, all of which can become something else. Hour by hour, the pile of civilian equipment transformed. The entertainment system's power core became a shield generator. Kitchen appliance motors were converted into weapon mounts. Communication arrays from games consoles were modified into sensor systems. "This is the key point," Zix emphasized as they walked among the council members. "Humans don't have a separate military industry. Their entire civilization is potentially military hardware. Every device, every tool, every machine can be turned into something else when needed." In the middle of the chamber, Bennett's team finished their work. What had been a pile of civilian equipment was now a functional defense system, complete with shields, weapons, and sensors. "And this isn't even our best work," Bennett said, smiling. "We were taking it easy since this is just a demonstration. In a real emergency, we'd work faster." The council chamber erupted in worried whispers. A representative from the Centaurian Federation stood up. "Are you saying," they asked, their crystalline form glittering with concern, "that any human ship, even a civilian vessel, could become a warship?" "Any ship, any station, any colony," Zix confirmed. "Our traditional methods of assessing military capability focus on counting weapons, ships, and soldiers. But with humans, everything they own is potential military equipment. Every civilian is a potential soldier. Every tool is a potential weapon." To prove the point, Bennett picked up what looked like a simple maintenance tool. In less than 5 minutes, he turned it into a working laser weapon. "This is what we call field modification," he explained. "Every human learns this kind of thinking. We don't see things for what they are. We see them for what they could be." The Proximan representative spoke next, their voice carrying across the chamber. "But surely there are limits. They can't just turn anything into a weapon." Zix played more footage on the main display. Humans turning farming equipment into tanks. Space station crews making weapons from exercise equipment. Miners converting their tools into defense systems. "The only limits," Zix said, "are materials and imagination. And humans, we have learned, have very active imaginations." A hologram appeared, showing a cargo ship transformation similar to what Bennett had just demonstrated. The cargo ship, using only materials and equipment it had on board, turned itself into a combat-capable vessel in less than 6 hours. "This is why I called this emergency session," Zix concluded. "Our entire system of measuring military capability is based on counting dedicated military assets. But with humans, this method is useless. We must count everything they have, because everything they have is potential military equipment." The council chamber was silent as this sank in. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. "What is your recommendation, Analyst Sixth?" "We must create new protocols," Sixth replied. "New ways to assess species that can rapidly adapt civilian technology for military use. But most importantly, we must understand that human military capability cannot be measured by counting their weapons. Their greatest weapon is their ability to make weapons from anything." Bennett nodded in agreement. There's something we say on Earth. Give a human a problem and some spare parts, and they'll find a solution. It might not be pretty, it might not be perfect, but it will work. As the council session ended, Zixth added one final note to their report. Traditional military assessment protocols have proven inadequate for human analysis. Their capability to convert civilian technology to military use makes every human-owned object a potential military asset. For practical purposes, their military capability must be classified as infinite. The council members left the chamber that day with a new understanding. They had always known humans were different, but now they understood why. In a galaxy where military power was measured by the weapons you had, humans had proved that anything could be a weapon. It wasn't their technology that made them formidable. It was their ability to reimagine what technology could do. Lieutenant Elizabeth Morgan stood at the viewing window of Deep Space Entertainment Complex 47, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of stars. The complex was the largest civilian space station in this sector, famous for its zero-gravity theaters and floating restaurants. It was about as far from a military installation as anyone could imagine. That was exactly why the council chose it for their final test. Lieutenant Morgan, her computer chimed. Incoming priority message from Galactic Council Testing Division. Elizabeth opened the message, already guessing what it would say. The council had been running these tests for months now, showing up at random human locations and asking them to demonstrate their adaptive capabilities. The message was simple. You have 72 hours to show us how this civilian entertainment complex could be converted for military defense. Use only materials and equipment currently on station. Elizabeth smiled. She'd been expecting something like this ever since the council's new assessment protocols were announced. She pressed the station-wide communication button. Attention all station personnel, she announced. We have a council test scenario. Who wants to help turn our entertainment complex into a fortress? The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Station workers, entertainers, restaurant staff, everyone wanted to participate. Humans, as Elizabeth had learned long ago, loved a good challenge. First thing, she told her gathered team, let's list what we have to work with. They made a quick inventory. Entertainment systems with powerful projectors, restaurant kitchens full of equipment, maintenance tools, cleaning robots, and various sports facilities, including a zero-gravity ball court. Sam Cooper, the head of maintenance, spoke first. Those entertainment projectors use high-energy focusing systems. With some adjustments, they could work as targeting systems. Good thinking, Elizabeth agreed. And the power systems that run them could be converted for weapons. Sarah Adams, who ran the zero-gravity restaurant, raised her hand. Our pressure cookers can be modified into small engines, and we have lots of liquid nitrogen for making special drinks that could be useful. Over the next 3 days, the entertainment complex transformed. The zero-gravity ball court became a training area for space combat maneuvers. Restaurant freezers were converted into ammunition manufacturing units. Entertainment projectors became targeting systems and communication arrays. Bill Nelson, the complex's chief engineer, proved especially creative with the cleaning robots. These things already have advanced sensors to detect dirt and debris. He explained while modifying one. With a few changes, they make perfect patrol drones. The council observers watched all of this with their usual mixture of amazement and concern. One of them approached Elizabeth on the second day. Your people seem to be enjoying this test, the observer noted. They're treating it like a game. Elizabeth nodded. Humans like solving puzzles, taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways. That's fun for us. Plus, everyone likes showing off a bit. The observer's tentacles wiggled in confusion. But these are entertainment systems. They're designed to make people happy, not fight wars. That's where you're still not understanding us, Elizabeth explained. To humans, a machine's original purpose is just a suggestion. Everything can be something else if you need it to be. By the end of the third day, the entertainment complex had become something else entirely. The main theater was now a command center. Restaurant kitchens had become ammunition factories. Cleaning robots patrolled the corridors as security drones. The Council's final test came when they sent a simulated attack fleet against the station. The observers expected the entertainment complex to put up a token resistance at best. Instead, they watched in amazement as the converted entertainment systems created a defense network that their ships couldn't penetrate. Modified projectors tracked and targeted incoming vessels with precision. Cleaning robots, now armed with repurposed kitchen equipment, defended the station's vital areas. The attack fleet's commander finally called off the test after 6 hours of failed attempts to breach the station's defenses. "Impossible," he said during the debriefing. "This was an entertainment complex 3 days ago. How did it become better defended than some military bases?" Elizabeth's response became part of the official council record. "Everything can be a weapon, a shield, or a tool. It just depends on how you look at it. Humans are good at looking at things differently." After the test, the council representatives gathered in what had been the main theater. Elizabeth presented them with her report, which included full details of how they had converted each system. "The most important thing to understand," she told them, "is that this wasn't special. Any human facility could do something similar. We all think this way. It's just part of who we are." The Council's final report on human military capabilities was released a week later. It established entirely new protocols for assessing species with rapid adaptation abilities. The report's conclusion became famous throughout the galaxy. Human space warfare capabilities must be classified as infinite due to their demonstrated ability to convert any technology to military use within extremely short timeframes. Traditional assessment methods are inadequate. When evaluating human military potential, all human-controlled technology and materials must be considered as potential military assets. As the entertainment complex was being converted back to its original purpose, Elizabeth added her own note to the report. "The most powerful human weapon isn't our technology. It's our ability to reimagine what technology can do. Every human is a potential engineer, every tool is a potential weapon, and every machine can become something new when needed. This isn't a military secret. It's just how we think." The complex returned to normal operation, though some of the modifications were kept with council approval. The zero-gravity theater now had better sound systems thanks to the converted targeting arrays. The restaurants worked more efficiently with their rebuilt kitchen equipment. And somewhere in the council's main archives, a new protocol was established. When dealing with humans, assume everything is more than it appears. Their greatest strength isn't their weapons. It's their ability to make weapons from anything. Assessment status: infinite potential. Handle with appropriate caution. Elizabeth went back to watching ships through the viewing window, knowing that the galaxy now understood something important about humans. They weren't just another spacefaring species. They were the species that could turn entertainment into defense, luxury into warfare, and peace into power, all while treating it like a fun puzzle to solve. As she liked to tell the council observers, everything has hidden potential. Humans are just really good at finding it.